Alright, so I was sent this article by Ryu, and we're looking at 8 obscure Game Boy JRPGs made by big developers. We know who these big developers are, and by the way, this is from MSN.com. So, we're going to have a look-see, and see if you can agree with this. But there's a lot that could be said about how much the Game Boy changed gaming. I was born in the 90s. I was born in the 80s. And even my life changed when I was given my own Game Boy Color with Pokemon Yellow. And I'm sure some of you know what it was like watching your games go from strictly on your TV or computer or to being held in your hands a bit better than I do. I would know. It's an everyday affair now with our phones and even the Nintendo Switch consoles around, but the future we're living in wouldn't be the same without the Game Boy. This is true. And just like how some of the first role playing games were made with only kilobytes of memory, it didn't take long before some developers got ambitious enough to stick a JRPG on this humble gray brick. Obviously, the aforementioned Pokemon games are debatably the Game Boy's biggest impact on gaming history, but the Saga games, you know better as Final Fantasy Legend, got its start in the Game Boy as well. Not every Game Boy RPG was that memorable, though, so here's some you might have forgotten from developers you know and love. Starting with number 1, Metal Walker by Capcom. Okay, I've never heard of this one. Straight away, we're back to bonding with battling partners. If you ask me, Metal Walker's like if Pokemon and Robot Wars had a baby, you put your robot friends in arena, tell them how to navigate the arena, and then they run into each other and duke it out. The winner keeps scrap metal they can use to build more of these sentient robots called Metal Busters. We're not looking at that. And there was a fair bit of ambition behind Metal Walker 2. You could explore towns and dungeons with your robot pal and run into random encounters to gather scrap and cores to progress. You could only have one buster with you at a time, but they follow you on the overworld like Pikachu in Pokemon Yellow. Unfortunately, Capcom's little Metal Walker that could just didn't. It launched 3 years after Pokemon, and with Digimon starting to find its footing in the same year, the damage was already done. It looked just like another monster raising game on the shelf, especially to the critics who played it. Number 2, a game that I and Ryu have played, and a handful of others, Great Greed. Now, judging from the box art, I think Great Greed didn't catch on because it looked more or less like the same as 10 other games from just the cover. Maybe we all shouldn't have judged it based on that, because Great Greed had a lot to offer, even back in 92. In the game itself, it has an art style reminiscent of Saga, with battles that feel similar to Dragon Quest. It's definitely clear where the game takes its inspiration from, but it comes with a twist that all the buttons execute different actions when in battle instead of letting you select them through menus. This Game Boy JRPG from Namco deals with saving the world of food-based people from a polluting villain named Biohazard. How nice is that? When the day is saved, you're given the option of marrying one of the king's daughters, but if you pester any of the male NPCs, they'll agree to marry you instead. This feature was probably included as a joke, but it manages to be one of the earliest examples of gay marriage in RPGs, regardless. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, you could marry the old lady, microwave, and things get really weird. And I know Magma WK did a video on this. Legend of the River King by Victor Interactive Software. Fishing has always been a prominent part of all kinds of JRPG and adjacent games over the years. It's an entire class in Final Fantasy XIV. You can fish in plenty of farming simulators, and none of us really mind. Back in the day, though, Victor Interactive Software had the brilliant idea to make an entire RPG centered around fishing itself. In Legend of the River King, your sister's sick, and the only way to cure her requires that you catch the famous guardian fish. You want RPGs done right. In fishing terms, go see Magma WK. He's done fishing RPGs before. You embark on a journey to find this cure-all fish by talking to townsfolk and exploring the world. Like many old RPGs, you have to find most of the info of out on your own by talking to people or reading the manual. The game itself doesn't hold your hand, it more or less just throws you in and tells you to sink or swim. Now, this might have been why this fishing game really never caught on. Doesn't help that it was easier to make sense of what was on the screen on a Game Boy Color. It's not all doom and gloom, though. The developers, Victor Interactive Software, made a hit or two this time. If you've played Harvest Moon or Harvest Moon 64, then you probably played one of these games. Victor Interactive Software was eventually bought by Marvelous, which likely means it's developing Story of Seasons games to this day. And for this one, we go to the number 3 Hudson Soft, which is now a part of Konami now. Bomberman Quest. So, how many of you knew there was a Bomberman JRPG for the Game Boy? Because I sure didn't. And that's exactly what Bomberman Questis. Questis? Quest is. Quest. Oh God. Whoever did that, they ought to be shot for doing that. So, how many of you knew there was a Bomberman JRPG for the Game Boy? Because I sure didn't, and that's exactly what Bomberman Quest is. While traveling to deliver some troublesome monsters to Planet Bomber, Bomberman shuttles attack. The attack leaves him stranded on a completely different planet with every single engine of his ship missing, and it's up to you to find out who stole the items and fight them to regain custody of them. It's a charming little RPG, a little JRPG with a surprising amount to it. There are secret bosses if you go through the dungeons twice over, and there's even a true final boss and an ending to match. It was even created by Bomberman's original developers at Hudson Soft. We will never forget you. Hudson Soft was purchased and merged with Konami in 2012. The merger might have not marked a loss for Bomberman fans, but for fans of Hudson Soft's other project, it was the end of an era. If you don't know the studio from Bomberman, you might recognize it from Mario Party, Bulk Slash, or Load Runner. And for another series that you've never heard of but has been played before, The Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls by Intelligent Systems. Yes, you don't know Intelligent Systems, they're the people behind Fire Emblem. Even though this game hasn't left Japan at all, there might be a chance you're familiar with this game anyway. It's as important to Nintendo as it's appeared in Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, and Super Smash Bros. Those 2 titles. The beginning of The Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls is pretty simple, but funny. It tells a tale of 2 rival princes who get too into being better than the other. When a princess has been kidnapped, the 2 roles turn it into another competition. While you rush to beat your rival and save the damsel in distress first, you're scammed by a witch who gives you a potion that turns you into a frog when you touch water. If you're a fan of Nintendo games, you should know what Intelligent Systems have made already. Fire Emblem, Paper Mario, and Advance Wars are a few of its prominent titles. A game that I and Ryu have played ourselves, God of Medicine by Konami. This game would have likely been a great hit in its day and age, especially with all the isekai anime out there to watch. Sadly, it's another game that never left Japan. God of Medicine's a game about three RPG fans who stumble upon a game world invading the real world. The warriors from the game world are defeated in battle, and the gamers are entrusted with their powers to stop the demon that threatens both worlds. Yeah, that is so isekai, isn't it? Interestingly, the game features a system that's not dissimilar to Final Fantasy VII's materia system. You can also save in God Medicine at any point in the game, including during battle. It's a save scummer's dream come true. There's plenty of self-referential humor to match the game's premise, but it also shows its age as a JRPG for the Game Boy. The most impressive thing about God Medicine is who developed it. Konami Computer Entertainment Nagoya is the very team who brought you this frustrating yet dedicated love letter to the genre. Keisen also had a hand in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Vandal Hearts, and The Grinch for the PlayStation? I suppose they couldn't all be winners, huh? And add to the fact, and look at whose name just showed up here. Were you from Breath of Fire? Because he did this game before I did. So therefore, let me give you a hand there, man. You made it. You made it to Emerson. But really, God Medicine is probably the only game that actually has its built-in code, which is the Konami code. It's actually an answer for one of the dungeons. So if you know it, for veterans like ourselves, it's up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A, select and start. That's Contra. 30-man, 10-man code, whatever you like to call it. It's that code. Puyo Puyo Gaiden Puyo Wars by Compile. Same people who was behind the Guardian Legend. Wait, I hear you say, is it Puyo Puyo Sega IP? Yes, dear reader, it is, which makes this Game Boy Color game all the more interesting and weird. For a while, Puyo Puyo was owned by its creators Compile, which saw games in the series all over the place. This led Puyo Puyo to be on the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo within the same brief window. During Puyo Puyo's height at Compile, it seemed that the developers wanted to experiment and do different things with the IP, just like Capcom had done with Mega Man and Mega Man X. The result is a strategy JRPG shoving the fantastical Puyo Puyo into a science fiction mech setting. Yep, Puyo Puyo Gaiden Puyo Wars is Fire Emblem with robots and Puyos somehow. It has a strange premise, but the presentation's honestly top notch. And if by any chance you miss what Compile used to do with Puyo Puyo before Sega took over the IP, I recommend at least checking out what Gaiden brought to the table. Spud's Adventure, you know this. You know the company. You see it all the time. Atlas. Persona. Shin Megami Tensei. And another Bible, I think. When I found out about this game, I know it has something to do with, I know it has something to do with Bible. I forgot the name of it. When I found out about this game, I had to put it on this list. It's the perfect surprise to end this walk through obscure JRPGs. What do you mean Atlas made a JRPG about a potato back in the day? This isn't a favorite dream, as much as it might feel like it. The game starts off as most adventures do. Princess stolen. Knight set out to save her, haven't returned. Never fear, Spud the adventurer is here, setting out to free the princess from her tower and spitting out bullets against anyone who gets in his way. Cute, wacky, and a perfect time capsule of games at the time. Spud's Adventure is a great, humble start to the JRPG giant Atlas has become now. Oh, and by the way, if you never heard of that, then you probably never heard of another game that Atlas has done called Rockin' Cats, otherwise known as New York Yankees, on the NES slash Famicom. So, with that said, Of all the games that I have run this list across, I have never played Bomberman Quest. I have never played Legend of the River King. I have played Great Greed, as well as God Medicine. I have also never played Puyo Puyo Gaiden or Puyo Wars, but as from what I'm looking at and what I got in my huge backlog of games that I oh yeah, and Metal Walker, also that I might want to give that a go. If there's for some reason there's like a fan translation of it, probably. I don't know. I'm going to give it a good hunt. It is worth looking for. And by the way, like I said, there are plenty of games out there as far as JRPGs are concerned. They aren't limited to or in terms of familiarity, they're out there. Plenty of games that basically have not hit the status of where, obscurity is. And as far as that is concerned, that should be a big thing. If you never actually played something from the Game Boys or the Game Gear, because Game Gear has a couple of obscurities in and of itself. And of course, Sega Genesis as well. All the older generation consoles have a lot of obscure stuff. So if you're basically tired of modern day, it doesn't hurt to go backwards, see what you can find for yourself. You can always search for this and you can always search for that. That's what the internet's for. To get information, not ask and not look for it yourself. Hey, but since I have been doing much of it, LPs and all, yeah, don't worry, the LPs are coming back by next week. I'm still working on it. I got my mic back, as you can tell, and I'm glad I have it back. So until next time, of whatever the hell I plan on doing, I'm back. There's nothing you can say to actually stop me. I've been your friendly neighborhood Tenkaichi, and I'll see you next time. Until then, I have spoken, and I am out. Later.